back, and what a delight and an honor to have back with us today our good friend Liz Peek. She's a columnist for FoxNews.com and the Financial Times, and certainly appreciate her time and her perspective on things. Hi, Liz. How you doing?
I'm great. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, good to see you. Are you tired of politics yet?
My husband's offering to take me away the week after the election, somewhere very far away. And I think it's a good idea.
Probably outside of a cell phone zone and fax and TV and all that good.
Exactly.
Well, no surprises yesterday in the Washington primary?
No surprises. Didn't mean much, but no surprises.
So Trump now has 1,209. There's 5 more states to go. Of course, the big one, winner take all, is California, 172. So for the most part, it's over, right?
Oh, on the Republican side, for sure. And even on the Democratic side, I mean, Bernie Sanders can give Hillary Clinton a run for her money in California, but she's going to be the nominee. There's almost no question about it, which, of course, is driving people on the left absolutely crazy, trying to figure out why Bernie Sanders persists. And it's a good question, except I think he's trying to influence the agenda and the platform for the Democrats. And I think he's going to be pretty successful in that.
No question about it. I mean, the last thing I saw, Liz, was it's only a 2-point spread in California. I mean, that's got to upset Clinton.
Exactly. And, you know, all the time that she spends trying to bat down Bernie Sanders is time she could be out there talking down Donald Trump. I mean, you know, I've been thinking, obviously, as I all have, an awful lot about this election cycle. And it is sort of a sad thing that mostly what we're going to be seeing, I think, between now and November is Hillary Clinton trying to tear down Donald Trump and Donald Trump doing the same. There seems to be on both sides more appetite for that kind of campaigning than for, you know, great ideas about how to get the economy growing again, et cetera, et cetera. I mean, I just think it's it's an unfortunate outcome of this very sort of excitable time in this country where most people, I think, are going to be voting against somebody rather than for somebody. And having said that, I know that a lot of your viewers probably are very excited about Donald Trump's candidacy, but, you know, an awful lot of that has really hinged on being negative and not very positive. So I find it sort of disheartening, I must say.
Oh, I agree with you 100%. I am really distraught over the fact that we're down to mudslinging. I mean, that's what a presidential race has come down to. I mean, it's just ridiculous. My concern is that the good people will just have enough and stay home. That really concerns me.
I think there is very likely to be all-time record low turnout in this election. And, you know, it happens. I mean, the last mayoral election in New York City pitted a very, very progressive leftist, Bill de Blasio, who ended up being elected, against a sort of unknown Republican, Joe Lhota, who was perfectly okay, but not exciting. And, you know, there was 17% turnout or something. I mean, it was really appalling. It can happen. And I just think, as I said, it's sort of unfortunate that's where we are.
All right, let's go over to the DNC just for a moment, Liz. Now, yesterday, you follow it like I do. It looks like Wasserman Schultz, it's more than Bernie going after her now. What would happen if the DNC has a chairmanship change going into the convention?
I think it's going to be very unsettling for the convention. After all, Debbie Wasserman Schultz is supposed to be the person who opens the convention, who basically runs it. But look, I think all the criticism being aimed at her is pretty appropriate. I mean, there's just no question that from the beginning, Hillary Clinton had this thing locked up in the minds of all the grandees of the Democratic Party. Bernie Sanders was sort of this annoying person who kept coming at them, and they treated him with a lack of respect, a lack of even-handedness. Obviously, the most egregious example of that, in my view, was the whole issue about the debate schedule. I remember looking at that and seeing debates on a Sunday night. I think there was one even on a long weekend, a 3-day weekend, and laughing out loud. It was so preposterous, so aimed at keeping anyone really from challenging Hillary Clinton. And obviously, Debbie Wasserman Schultz is very embedded in the Clinton campaign. So I think Sanders, honestly, who has, by the way, become daily, if more vocal about his antipathy towards the head of the DNC and the fact that he would definitely replace her if he were president, I think he has some, legitimate grievances here. Would it have affected the outcome? Probably not. But, it's not a great look. There are other things that are also clouding the legitimacy of Hillary Clinton's coronation, such as the very large number of superdelegates that were sewn up even really before this campaign got going. I don't find that a very transparent or attractive aspect of how they're choosing their nominee. But and I think that all this criticism is kind of legitimate, and she may be bounced. It sounds like that might happen.
The other part of this is that Bernie has endorsed her opponent for her House seat. Now, I don't know that district that well. Could that be influential?
I don't know. It seems unlikely to me. She's been there a long time, and as we all know, these incumbents are unbelievably hard to disgorge, I guess is one way of saying it. But it is certainly a smack in the face and a very personal one.
Wow. All right. What are the chances then of a second ballot at the Democratic convention? At that point, I mean, Bernie's got a foot in the door.
I don't know why really that would happen. I don't think it's going to happen. I think that this thing will be concluded by the time they get to Philadelphia. I think it'd be very, very long odds that it won't be. I think the question really is Sanders going to make the almost obligatory peace gestures towards the Clinton campaign, towards Hillary Clinton? My guess is he will, because he isn't going to want to brand himself an outsider yet again. I mean, don't forget, he really wasn't a Democrat until pretty recently. So maybe he wants to sort of stay in the party apparatus more now. And so I think he will probably make peace with Hillary Clinton. The issue is whether his followers will do that. And, the more that he lambasts Hillary Clinton for her ties to Wall Street, her untrustworthiness, we've got a bunch of events taking place over the next several weeks and months that are going to be very injurious to Hillary's favorability ratings in terms of honesty and trustworthiness. So all these things together, plus Donald Trump now landing on Hillary with some ads that are going to be pretty hard hitting, I would imagine. She's going to need some help from Bernie Sanders in the election. So the way that could work out is that some serious policy issues come up that are basically given to the Sanders camp. But it's going to be tricky getting all those millennials who are so invested in his campaign into the voting booth in November.
I think you're spot on, because on the other hand, he does go into the convention somewhat as a power broker. And I don't know if that will play into his ability to influence Hillary on a VP pick. But the last number I saw, maybe you can verify this, 37% of his voters probably would go with Trump.
I know. That was really an outlandish sort of outcome. And frankly, I doubt it. I mean, I just don't think that people who are really wound up about a socialist agenda are going to find much of what Donald Trump has to offer very appealing. But again, I think we're going to see in November an awful lot of voting against as opposed to voting for. And it may well be that some of those young people who have rallied behind Sanders will conclude that Hillary Clinton is the worst of two evils. But my guess is they stay home. I mean, young voters typically are not very well represented at the polls. They tend to not show up. I think particularly disenfranchised ones may not show up.
How dangerous is it for Hillary Clinton to just ignore Bernie? I mean, if she walks in, she's coronated, she doesn't pay any attention to him. Is it risky for her to do that? And could he go third party or independent?
No, I don't think he has any shot of doing that whatsoever. But again, risky, yes, because don't forget that one of the main ingredients of the Obama coalition was, in fact, voters under the age of 40. And those are the people who are, of course, behind Sanders. And they don't like Hillary Clinton. They don't even know quite why they don't like her, except that Sanders has painted her as this sort of dishonest, fat cat or something, or ties to at least a lot of fat cats. But I think that it's dangerous for her to ignore them. And, Hillary Clinton is a terrible campaigner. I mean, she truly is. I think her political instincts are awful. And she surrounds herself with some people who are also equally awful, such as Gloria Steinem talking about how young women who are voting and supporting Bernie Sanders are only coming out for those rallies because they hope to meet men. Think of what could possibly have been a worse statement from a Hillary surrogate who, when Hillary really wants the women vote and needs the women vote and also wants the young people's vote. It was a double down terrible disaster. And, don't think that Donald Trump won't be repeating all those slips as the campaign rolls forward. I think he's got a tremendous ear for what resonates, and he will be on things like that in a heartbeat, and it's going to hurt her.
All right, before we take a break, I think one thing that's becoming very concerning to me, I have yet to hear a plausible policy statement come out of Hillary Clinton's campaign. Most of it's social issues, but I've heard nothing on the economy, nothing on security, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. I mean, she could possibly get through this entire campaign and never make a policy statement.
Well, again, that's what I was saying earlier. It's all sort of reeling out reasons to be scared of Trump, to not trust Trump, to think that Trump's going to bankrupt the country. Where's her ideas? And her camp would answer you and say, well, if you go on the website, there are 42 position papers that talk about tax reform. The thing is, she can't talk about those things because she sounds like a robot. She has no conviction. When Bernie Sanders or Donald Trump talk about ideas they have, whether it's ideas you love or hate, you pretty much believe that they believe them. And they're very convincing as a result. Hillary Clinton's positions and position papers are the product of endless focus groups, advisors, consultants, people who are tweaking them and trying to figure out what works, what doesn't work. It's not Hillary Clinton speaking. So she is terrible at that. And I think that's one of the reasons you haven't seen more of it.
Let me take a quick break. When we come back, Liz, now that Hillary has basically said that she would turn to her husband on the economic issues, that puts him into play, and therefore his past now is at open territory for criticism. I'd like to get your comment on that. We'll be right back with Liz Peek in just a moment and continue the conversation.
I'm Paulina Leiser, producer of Focus Today. Thank you for watching this video, and make sure to check our other videos at theDove.us.
Okay, we're back, and delighted to have back with us today Liz Peek. She's a columnist for FoxNews.com and also the Financial Times. Her website, if you want to go and correspond and check in, LizPeek.com, and that's P-E-K, LizPeek.com. Liz, so many little things here I want to talk about. Before I forget it, let me just do a little sidebar here. As you know, the president came out with this incredible edict that he's going to hold education funding to states that don't have the transgender bathroom issue. How in the world does Hillary Clinton defend that?
Well, I think she will defend it as being part of this sort of liberal progressive movement to embrace all segments of society, et cetera. I think that, if anything, this election upcoming will be a referendum on White House overreach. I mean, that really seems to me to be the big sort of philosophical issue of the day. This is not an issue that the federal government should be handling. And what we now see with the Obama legacy is that in this realm, and also in their EPA mandates that are aimed at climate change, and in their energy portfolio, and in their immigration actions, all these things are before the Supreme Court for a good reason, which is that Congress should have been advising on them and or participating in legislation having to do with these topics. Instead, the White House has done all these things unilaterally, which I think at the end of the day means that his legacy could crumble before our very eyes. So to answer your question, Hillary will make this part of the Obama legacy, but I think it's a part that's extremely fragile.
Yeah, because everything I read on that, this subject polls really low across the board.
And by the way, almost all of these things don't poll very well. I mean, that's That's what's extraordinary. Even after two drubbings in the by-election, and most recently in 2014, which really significantly spoke to the way the public felt about the immigration, the amnesty, executive actions, and some other things like the EPA regulations, but mainly the immigration, Obama never changes course. He never bends to the will of the people, or even hears the will of the people. And I think this is just another example of this. You know, the Iran nuclear accord, people are not in favor of it because they have been convinced through their own research and the research other people have done that this is not a viable and sustainable agreement. Doesn't matter to Obama. It's part of his legacy. And guess what? It may not hold.
Yeah, I think you're right. All right, over to Bill Clinton just for a moment. She's made him part of the campaign, by naming him possibly being head of the economy. Therefore, is it fair game to go after him like Trump is? And it's gotten pretty low.
It is absolutely fair game to go after him. And it's exactly right. I mean, Hillary Clinton is in a box, and it's a box of her own making. She is running on Bill Clinton's record and achievements while he was a president. And she's running on Obama's record. And both of them are flawed. In the case of Bill Clinton, she talks about putting him in charge of the economy. Well, what were the elements of his economic agenda that stand up? NAFTA, that's extremely negative in terms of the way certainly her camp looks at it. Free trade and all these very large trade agreements, such as the one now being proposed by President Obama, are very much disliked by people on the left and Democratic voters. So that's a tough one for her to argue. Welfare reform, that was discredited by the left a long time ago. She can't really talk about that. So it's kind of interesting to go back and say, okay, Bill Clinton in charge of the economy, what does that mean exactly? What is it he is going to be proposing that will get this economy moving again? Ditto when she pivots to supporting President Obama and running on his legacy, same kinds of issues. So I think Hillary's kind of in a squeeze on this. She's hoping that voters have amnesia about Bill Clinton and all his escapades. But, I don't think they're going to. And I think it is totally fair game to go after him because, frankly, he should never have gotten away with all the things he did in the first place.
Yeah, I think most people would say amen to that. But I have to tell you, Trump's ad in the last couple of days using the audio voice of the 4 or 5 of his accusers. Wow, we've never seen anything like that before.
It's pretty savage. But on the other hand, have we ever had someone running for president who's been accused of rape and where basically it's been covered up and ignored by his own party and by his own wife? I don't think that's a very attractive kind of profile. And again, to your point, I think it is fair game to go after him on this stuff. And I'm sort of frankly glad that Trump is doing it.
Now even the death of Vincent Foster's back on the headlines.
Yeah. Well, I mean, there again, I'm not a conspiracy theorist. It's pretty hard to imagine that the Clintons could have arranged for the death of Vince Foster and covered it up. Now that we have all watched, television programs that make those kinds of things seem very real, maybe there's going to be more appetite to hearing about it. But that was a little tough selling. You don't need to go that deep. Let's talk about the Clinton Foundation, which is one of the most corrupt vehicles that any political family has ever used to perpetuate their presence and their power. I wrote about that today. I mean, this is not right-wing conspiracy stuff. This is the New York Times, the New Yorker, Wall Street Journal. Everybody who has investigated the Clinton Foundation with any energy whatsoever comes away quite confident in describing it as a complete mess and a sham. The new movie Clinton Cash, based on Peter Schweizer's book, is out, which details any number of circumstances under which foreign companies in particular, though there are also many domestic companies that fall into this category, asked for favors from the Clinton State Department and were granted those favors either after or during which they paid Bill Clinton millions of dollars in speaking fees and gave millions of dollars to the Clinton Foundation. There is an incredibly disturbing pattern of behavior in numerous incidents where this took place. And if American voters don't know about this, it's appalling, because they should.
Well, I just want to say, our viewers and listeners, the Clinton Cash movie, you may want to check it out. Now, we had Peter Schweitzer on when the book came out, but I got to tell you, this movie is stunning. Before I run out of time, let's go back to Trump just for a moment. All indications are Newt may be the VP. How do you feel about that?
I don't think it's a good idea, honestly. I think that Trump really does need somebody who knows their way around Congress. But I think that going back to the past is too much playing Hillary Clinton's playbook. That's what that campaign is all about. Really, she's dredging up policies and people from the 1990s. I don't think the Republicans should do the same thing. Newt Gingrich could play a very important role in this White House, in the Trump White House, should that occur. But I don't, in the way of chief of staff or, in some cabinet position. But I think as a vice presidential candidate, really, he's a very smart man. I admire him. I just think it's somebody needs to be looking forward and moving forward. The fact that we have all septuagenarians nearly running in this campaign is pretty amazing to me.
Liz, thank you for your time. I know you are tightly scheduled, and we value greatly the time you give us when we call. Let me say to our viewers and listeners, you can go to lizpeek.com and read her columns and her listings there. And, of course, foxnews.com and Financial Times. Thanks, my friend. Let's see where this goes.
Thank you so much for having me.
See you. We'll be right back.